us. They're going to be at risk. We need freedom. We need freedom. We need freedom. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just working their butts off so you can have meat at your table. Do you think about that? What do you choose? Are sweating in there. You guys aren't even paying them enough. And then you take them over and you guys are mean. We need rights. We need rights. We need rights.
We have rights here. In the United States of America, we have rights.
We have a nation of men. And you're going to say the color is next because they're scared of us people of color. Because we're going to be the majority pretty soon. That is why they're doing all this.
Mira, gente, escuchen.
Hey guys, wait up! Hey! Doing the right thing. If they're here illegally, then they're criminals, aren't they? If you break the law, you're a criminal, right? Send them home.
El día 12 de diciembre, pues yo me levanté como todos los días. Me dijo mi esposa, no vayas hoy a trabajar. Dijo, vamos a la iglesia, a visitar la iglesia, a la Virgencita de Guadalupe. Todo le dijo, pues no puedo faltar porque puede hacer que me corran.
December 12th, of course, is the Feast of Our Lady Guadalupe. We had been preparing for this celebration for a long, long time. That year, we decided to do it on the actual feast day on the 12th.
Eran las 8 de la mañana cuando subiera el mayordomo y nos dijo a toda la gente, vamos a tener una junta todos en la cafetería de la planta. Y vamos bajando la escalera cuando miramos todos ya los oficiales de migración ahí en la escalera donde ya no se podía escapar nadie.
And everybody was just walking down the cafeteria and everybody just got locked there and cried, and some people tried to escape, so they got tied with chains and their hands tied back and their feet, they were dragging them out.
Ya cuando estuvimos ahí todos juntos, abajo todos los compañeros de trabajo, empezó un oficial de migración a decirnos, dijo, esta va a ser su Navidad para todos. Dijo, van a tener su regalo en Navidad.
We actually got the first phone call from the Midwest, from Marshalltown, Iowa. And then right here in Greeley, people started to both come into work and say something's happening, and we started getting the phone calls. Then Worthington, Minnesota, then Grand Island, Nebraska, then Cactus, Texas, then Hiram, Utah. And you knew, okay, it was happening all at once. It was like watching a tidal wave and saying, okay, what do we do now? The Swift raids of 2006 were the largest ICE raids in U.S. history. There had never been a simultaneous raid on an employer in ICE's history, and it made headlines.
I think it's mislabeling. I think it's unfair to call something a raid. It sounds like a group of pirates that are out on the open seas and boarding a ship illegally or something. Federal government engaged in an enforcement action at the Swift plant.
I know for a fact that the illegals are taking the jobs of a lot of the companies that are here and a lot of people that are here. A lot of roofers have gone out of business, a lot of people that are tree cutters, a lot of Swift people the people that work in factories, their jobs were taken away.
What about the guy that lost his $18.10 an hour job, who was a Coloradan, who was an American? Well, he now goes into the poorer job, he becomes the poor class, and the rich guy that hired all the illegal aliens becomes part of the rich class, and now you don't have America with a middle class anymore. Then you have the inequity and the loss of the American dream. And do we want to lose the American dream? Because there is no Mexico dream.
You know, work in our facilities, people can make $25,000, $30,000 a year. You know what a school teacher makes. You know, it's hard work. And if you have two people in the same household working, that's $50,000, $60,000. And they have the American dream.
to them, they're looking for this American dream, but we in America don't even have our dreams anymore.
Butchering cattle and pigs used to be an honored profession, and the mechanization and putting these big slaughter processes together took it away from the family butcher or the hometown butcher to, $200 to $300 an hour. And you can only do very little automations there. It's done manually.
And the question is, can we function without low-skilled immigration? That's where people often come to, well, what are we going to do? Who's going to clean my pool? Who's going to shine my shoes and vacuum my rugs? Well, my first argument is vacuum your own stinking rugs. If you can afford help, if you can afford servants, well, whatever, more power to you. What immigration's doing, though, is subsidizing your desire to hire somebody to mow your lawn. And it distorts the labor market.
We don't need low-cost labor to have us compete. We can do it in many cases through technology.
The people that are affected the most in terms of wages by immigration tend to be those that are competing directly with the immigrants. So it tends to be low-skilled U.S. workers, mostly workers without a high school degree, which again, that percentage of our workforce has been declining over the years.
You go look at our applicant flow. Our ads are not being answered by local, kids and people from the farming community. There's no jobs being taken from the community.
The law right now requires you to advertise those jobs. So if you want that job, for heaven's sakes, go and apply for it and get that job. If the job is something that you do not wish to do, and so the job is untaken, then surely we should be able to fill it with a foreign worker.
America has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the industrialized world, and yet, wait a minute, we're the country that takes the most immigrants, so how can that be? Well, I think part of it is that immigrants create jobs because they fill niches in the economy, they do all sorts of work at the low end of the scale, things like gardening and working at car washes and restaurants and nursing homes, doing a lot of the grunt work that it's hard to get Americans to do.
I was told by our union rep in the Greeley plant that federal officers were there with guns, and they were there with SWAT jackets, and that they had shut down the entire plant, and they were holding all the workers captive in the cafeteria.
Ya empezaron a decir ellos, los que sean residentes de aquí de Estados Unidos, hagan una línea, pónganse para tal lado, los residentes a otro lado.
Pues, para mí, yo me fui con los ciudadanos. Yo sé un poco de inglés, me fui para allá por donde estaban los ciudadanos.
Pero, pues, él sí corrió con suerte. A mí lo que me hizo falta fue el inglés. Porque tal vez yo también podía hacer lo mismo, pero yo no sabía inglés.
Me tocó pasar con el emigrante. Me preguntó, what's your name? Y ya le dije, mi nombre es Fernando González. Me dijo, when you born? Ya le di la fecha de nacimiento, cuando yo había nacido. Where you are from? Le dije, de Texas, de donde supuestamente soy. Y luego me dijo, ¿y tu ID? Dijo, you have an ID with you? Le dije, no, I don't have my wallet with me. Le dije, it's in my locker. If you give me a chance to go to the locker, I can go get my wallet. He said, no, you cannot go in there. Ya después me dijo, pásale. Dijo, you can go.
Me and my friend, we didn't have our papers. We didn't even have our license or nothing with us. We were just standing right there where all the residents were. And I started talking to one of the guys, and I told him, I have no family here, and I don't have nobody that has my key to my house, I said. And I said, I don't even have friends. I said, my friend is here with me. I said, so how are you gonna get my residency card, my green card? He goes, where are you from? Where did you grow up? And I told him I grew up in Wyoming. He goes, you two are free to go. He let us go.
The Thursday before the enforcement action happened, I got a call, and I was told that we plan on having 180 federal agents here, and we're going to conduct an operation at the Swift plant.
Today in the United States and around the world, immigration will become what I call the plague of the 21st century, or the human Katrina of the 21st century. And it is a human dilemma facing all humanity.
I've been cleaning houses for 15 years. There's the American dream that you own your own business and you get on your feet, but there's still us in the lower middle class that we're trying to climb this ladder, but we can't climb a ladder, we can't get out of the rut, and it just keeps, everything keeps going up, but our paychecks can't go up because we have too many illegal immigrants taking these jobs that we can't get.
From our perspective, every employee was lawfully an our employee. We had complied with the laws and they were our employees. And we felt that emotional and ethical obligation to do everything we can to safeguard, families, the community, and the circumstances.
Pues dijeron, ya se llenó este camión y vámonos. Y me fui y pues yo todavía en la mente llevaba, ¿y mi familia? ¿Qué va a pasar con mi familia? Yo ya me llevo a migración, ¿qué va a hacer mi familia?
Yo pienso que todos nos acobardamos y dijimos, pues vámonos. Ya nos subieron como a las 10 de la mañana a los camiones, todos amarrados con cadenas de las manos y pies, como si fuéramos unos asesinos o de lo peor nos trataron. Y todo el día nos tuvieron hasta como las 7 de la noche amarrados. Y ya nos dijeron los que quieran salir ahorita voluntarios, dijo, firmen un papel. Dijo, ahorita va a salir el avión como a las 10 de la noche, dijo. Y ahorita el que quiera irse, se va a ir. Nomás firmen voluntarios. Ok, pues vamos a firmar. Yo salí voluntario y ya nos mandaron para El Paso, Texas. Y el cónsul de México entró a hablar con nosotros a las oficinas de migración. Le dije, oiga, pero yo tengo un problema. Le dije, cuando nos agarraron, pedimos hablar con nuestras familias y no, todavía hasta ahorita. Le dije, no me han dejado, ya era el tercer día que teníamos detenidos. Y dijo, ¿y quieres hablar con tu esposa? Le dije, pues sí. Le dije, ella no sabe ni si estoy bien o qué está pasando conmigo. Y ya ella misma me hizo la llamada para acá, para Greeley, Colorado. Y son recuerdos que se quedan, sabrá Dios hasta cuándo, hasta que uno muera, se va a quedar ese recuerdo. Sí.
Our second shifts were not impacted, yet people didn't show up for work. And, but not because they were illegal or anything, it's just that there was the fear of this law enforcement action of going in these small communities. And I mean, our own management members were just, they were shaken. And this was almost like a lifetime event.
Ya luego sacaron las huellas y sacaron todas. Me acuerdo después de allí, yo soy el último de todo, que salí a las 3 de la mañana ahí en donde sacan las huellas. Pero no me llevaron a la cárcel, sino que me llevaron para una cárcel de policía. Y hasta allí, el siguiente día nos dormimos hasta las 6 de la mañana el siguiente día. Ya cuando llegué aquí ya no estaba acusándola como criminal. Y ahí ya me asusté demasiado. Yo, pues, el criminal para mí como le está tratando que quiera matar a alguien o...
If we break the law, you and I break the law, we pay the consequences. Now, we don't want the consequences, and we'd like to avoid them, and we're not very happy when the consequences occur, and we shouldn't be blaming somebody else for our consequences.
If you do something wrong, you should be caught and you should pay. And I don't care if you're legal or illegal.
Simplemente yo estaba trabajando.
When I got there, I parked my car and started walking towards the plant. I could hear people saying, "There's Father, there's Father, there's Father." And I thought to myself, what am I supposed to do? So I decided that the only thing I could do, I thought, I'm not going to join any protest. I'm not going to stand and yell. So I found the woman who called me and I said to her, gather some people together, we'll say the rosary. Thinking I'll say the rosary and maybe that'll take the focus off a few things and give people something to do.
también nosotros perdonamos a los que nos ofenden. No nos dejes caer en tentación, y líbranos del mal. Dios te salve, reina llena de gracia, Señor es contigo, bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres y bendito tu fruto de Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega, Señora, por nosotros pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte.
To see those people whining and crying and yelling and screaming and all of that, and you've got a little child, 3 or 4 years old in that, and then you don't think that's not going to affect them for the rest of their life? It will.
A lady who called me from inside the plant, her and her husband were both detained, and they had children that were at school. They needed to be picked up. And she called me and she was crying. And you know, it was heart-wrenching. And so we got people to pick up the children and take care of them.
Our main focus was to help the people who were being left behind in a certain sense, and to help them to do several things. How were they going to help pay their bills? Where were they going to find resources for food and clothing?
They broke the law, and the law came in and did what the law was supposed to do. If I rob a bank, I'm going to jail, but nobody's going to feed my family, give me clothing and extra money. No one's going to do that for me.
This is a disgrace that this would happen in this day and age in the United States of America. I was very offended by it, so we had a press conference that day. We contacted immigration attorneys that day, and I talked to a number of officials myself. I said, I'm an attorney as well as the president. I represent them in my capacity as union president. I represent them in my capacity as an attorney. And I've got a right to know who's been detained, and I have a right to know where you've taken them. And they would not give us answers. And that continued for weeks.
There was a community forum the night of the raid. And I'll never forget that moment and seeing, you know, the son or daughter, a mother of someone who's been jailed and detained, not knowing where they are and having so many questions that couldn't be answered. It was a nightmare.
This kind of wholesale, I'm going to sweep you up, and if you look Mexican, you're going to get pulled aside and prohibited from talking to your family and prohibited from talking to any legal counsel, and we're going to take you away and nobody's going to know where you went. That just sounded to me like it was something that should be completely and utterly in contradiction to what we are as a nation.
Isn't it tragic that the workers that were rounded up in this raid had no way of becoming legal? And isn't it tragic that an employer cannot find the legal workers that he needs to do the work, and now they're all criminals? To me, that is wrong. It shows how desperately we need a solution.
Swift is not a criminal. Swift has done nothing wrong. Swift has in fact tried to go above and beyond and try to do everything possible to do it right.
As I was growing up, we often made the comment that Greeley was a city of wide streets and narrow minds. And I think we kind of joked about that, but yet I think there was a degree of truth to that, because Greeley was established as the Union colony, and it was established by Nathan Meeker with sponsorship from newspaper editor Horace Greeley at the New York Tribune in New York City. And it was established as kind of a special place for a select group of people. They built a wall around the community, and the story goes that there were actually still parts of that wall around Greeley up until maybe 1950.
Before we were called the Mexican town, or the Tijuana or whatever.
There's some friction between perhaps Anglos and recent immigrants, but there's also some friction between native U.S. citizen, third-generation Hispanics and the immigrants also.
My folks came from Mexico in 1918, but they came over legally through the Laredo, Texas office. I'm very proud to be an American. I love my country. I support it. And I don't believe that a lot of illegal aid should be given to illegals that don't earn it.
Beef is a staple of the American diet. It's part of our culture to eat meat. So, you know, it kind of hits in a very visceral way, you know, food supply, how are we going to get the job done?
There's an estimated between about 225,000 and 275,000 undocumented immigrants in Colorado. That represents roughly about 5% or so of the state's population.
From a policy and economic point of view, illegal immigration is about as rich a subject as you can imagine. So it's hard to deal with this and not enter into almost every sphere of society.
The differences between the immigrants yesterday and today aren't really all that significant. What's different is us. Our society has fundamentally changed. An analogy is to donuts. When you're 8 years old, you eat all the donuts your parents will let you eat. They're probably even good for you. When you're 46 years old, you can't eat donuts like that anymore. You're not sick, you're just mature. You've outgrown the ability to eat donuts like that. Immigration is similar. In a word, we have changed not just in degree, but in kind. Modern society is fundamentally different than anything that's gone before it, and immigration is now something that we've outgrown, a phase that we need to leave behind. The first big amnesty was passed by Congress in 1986, and it was based on a deal, an explicit grand bargain, they actually called it that, prohibiting the employment of illegals for the first time ever. Being illegal was illegal, but employing an illegal was not. And turning the jobs magnet off was considered key. So for the first time ever, prohibiting the employment of illegals, but in exchange, tying up the loose ends of the old policy, but the promises of enforcement were abandoned.
Clearly the government let us down. They let us down by not enforcing immigration law for more than 15 years. They just didn't do it. Why didn't they do it? There's a myriad of reasons why they chose not to. The big one was, they didn't have any funding to do it. Congress never gave the money to the executive branch to enforce the law. But now, what we're trying to do is overreact and overcompensate. Like everybody does when they make a mistake, I'm going to overcompensate. We're overcompensating now instead of focusing on the solution.
Right after September 11th, 2001, the Immigration and Customs agencies were combined into Immigration and Customs Enforcement as part of the Department of Homeland Security. So as a result of that, their focus changed from immigration to terrorism. And it's just started to focus back on immigration in the last 2 years. The issue to me has always been illegal immigration. And people sometimes want to blend those two and forget the word illegal. And that's the key word to me. The illegal immigration problem, I think, is a serious one, and it shows a disrespect for the law. We need to find ways to let more people into our country legally. And two, we need to figure out whether we really have the guts to enforce the laws that we have in this country.
I got a call that the raids had occurred, that individuals had been arrested and had been removed from the plant by bus and were presumably being transported to the detention facility in Aurora. It's scrambling to figure out where they were sending 260 people.
And there was chaos and confusion about where are the families and workers being shipped to. Are they going to the Aurora Detention Center here in Colorado? Are they going to Texas? Trying to get as much information about where they're being sent so that we can try and provide legal support.
Llegué a la central camionera de Ciudad Juárez y hablé con mi esposa. Le dije, ¿sabes qué? Le dije, ya estoy aquí ya en Juárez. Le dije, ya a 5 de la tarde sale el camión para Guanajuato y ya me voy a ir. Y sí, pasaron los días. Se llegó el día 24 de diciembre. Sí, yo hablaba con mi esposa, mis niños. Me decían, papi, ¿por qué te fuiste? ¿Por qué los dejaste solos? Les dije yo no me vine porque quise, hijo, o mi hija, la más grande, me echaron. Todo por estar trabajando en un país que no es de uno, pero sabemos que este país, aunque no sea de uno, nos da para comer, para vivir mucho mejor que en el país de uno. Y luego empecé a hablar con los amigos, con las personas que nos habían echado todos para allá, que estábamos en el mismo trabajo. Dijeron, vámonos otra vez. No, pues vámonos. Y sí, nos vinimos otra vez, caminamos 3 noches y a la tercera noche ya cuando íbamos a llegar a la parte donde nos iban a levantar, nos dijo el guía que nos traía, dijo, falta poquito, dijo ya no. Yo entre el cerro donde veníamos, daba 3 pasos, me caía, ya no podía levantar los pies.
Now the groups in Greeley, such as Catholic Charities, such as Frente de Lucha and Latinos Unidos and many others, with very few resources and with very few capacity, stepped up and provided tremendous support to the families and to the workers. The UFCW, as a union, provided tremendous support to the workers.
Well, we do our ministry every Sunday, but I did not go and try and raise money for them, because if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do it for everybody that's legal too.
We got financial assistance to help these families from far as away as California and New York.
This is wrong that you are pulling in money to give to illegal families. They should, this is not right.
If they were coming in the front door, they would learn about our country, they would learn about the Constitution, they would learn about the Bill of Rights, they would learn, they would learn to speak English, they would learn, like many of our ancestors, that, gee, I want to become an American.
Those SWIFT employees who were arrested and detained in the Aurora facility, of those eligible for bond, 100% received bonds and were bonded out. At some point, we were able to determine that 62 of those arrested were put on a flight to El Paso.
Eventually, we filed an action in federal court under habeas corpus, and we want to know where these people are, we want to know who they are, and we want to be able to talk to them. We have a right to represent them, they have a right to talk to us, and the judge granted that.
We got everybody who was moved to El Paso. The judges there ultimately granted changes of venue so that those people could come back to Aurora and fight their cases in Colorado. Many of those arrested at the raid, the night of the raid, signed what's called stipulations to removal, where they basically waive all their rights to fight their case and say, just go ahead and deport me. And the government, we argued that they didn't really understand what they were saying, and the government agreed that it was inappropriate to keep those waivers and stipulations in place, and the clients were permitted to withdraw them and then pursue their case.
We spent over $200,000 on outside attorney fees to represent these people. Some of them did not have good cases to be able to stay here. Some of those people elected to voluntarily return from wherever they were from. Some of them decided to stay here and fight, but it was an abuse of the government power, clear abuse, and it doesn't matter whether you're white or whether you're yellow or red or black. It's offensive because that should not be happening.
We have laws in place, and we have always prided ourselves on being a nation that is based on the rule of law.
And what we have now is an unbelievable complex mess of laws that actually are second only to the tax law in their complexity and absurdity.
On the enforcement side, it's illegal for an employer under current law knowingly to hire an undocumented worker, but the key phrase is knowingly.
Why didn't they just get in line and come legally? The reason is, for most of them, there's no line to get into. There are no visas in the immigration system for low-skilled workers who are needed.
Now, if the laws were changed, I would uphold them, because that's what my job is, to uphold the law. There are laws on the books right now that I don't agree with at all, but I know I need to follow them unless I can get those laws changed.
Even illegal or undocumented workers have rights in the United States. They have rights under statutes, and they have rights under our Constitution. So often in raid settings, rights get lost in the shuffle. People don't have access to lawyers, they're scared, they often don't know their rights.
It's consequently a legal system which is complicated for most people with a high school degree to understand, is extremely complicated for them to understand. What that creates is fear, and fear drives people into the underground.
Data are not perfect with respect to illegal immigration, just like they're not perfect with respect to any illegal activity. The surveyor goes around, hello, are you illegal? What is the answer to that? So the estimates range nationally from maybe 12 million to 20 million, depending on who's estimating.
80% of immigrant households are mixed status households. That means there's citizen children in them, there's legal permanent residents, there could be citizen adults.
100 million people will be added to the United States by 2030 to 2035, somewhere around 27 to 30 years from now. And it's going to create environmental chaos, it's going to create social chaos, it's going to create scarcity, energy crises.
The worst thing is to have our population decline, because that is not consistent with a growing economy.
Markets are very powerful things, and that's why economists like to talk about supply and demand. As we saw in America during Prohibition, there was still a demand for alcohol, even though some people didn't want people to drink. So similarly, there's a supply of labor and there's a demand for labor, and you can see the power of the market at work.
If they would really just go in and start arresting the employers of illegal aliens nationwide, you would see what is called attrition through enforcement.
You've got to go after the employer. But if an employer is using the rules given to it by the government, what is that employer supposed to do? We're using the E-Verify, or the basic pilot, the predecessor. We've been using this since 1997. Every employee came back from the federal database saying authorized to work. And quite frankly, the illegals getting employed, at least what we're experiencing, is very few of them are fraudulent documents. It's legal documents fraudulently obtained.
My son, my eldest son, lost his wallet in Denver. Last year he was notified that he was working in North Carolina. He's never been in North Carolina. That is a problem with the illegals. They don't care that they take somebody's ID to use it and ruin your credit, ruin your life. And that's what I resent. I don't need any help to ruin my credit, trust me.
Yo voy a luchar por mi familia. Le dije, señor juez, yo aquí estoy en este país con mi familia. Yo no estoy robando. Yo no me agarraron robando, no me agarraron tomando, no me agarraron drogado. Le digo, me agarraron trabajando. Dijo, sí, dijo, pero estás robando identidad. Le digo, sí, le digo, pero es que yo hice esto porque yo quiero trabajar para mi familia. Yo no quiero que mi familia sufra, y también pues yo quiero tratar de yo sacarlos adelante, mi familia, sin pedirle ayuda al gobierno. Desgraciadamente llegué a este país indocumentado. Yo entré en el 99 a trabajar en SWIFT, y cuando yo entré en SWIFT yo tenía dos trabajos. Trabajaba en el FIG y en el SWIFT para sacar toda la familia adelante. Entonces, yo cuando entré en SWIFT yo duré 7 años ahí, ahora después de que pasó esto, que nos agarraron.
Swift & Company is part of an industry that's been on a journey that's relied upon, the immigrant workforce. It's complicated work, it's in hot conditions, cold conditions, and it's always been that kind of stepping stone in many respects into the middle class fabric and society of America.
Right now, employers don't have much of a choice. They enroll in E-Verify, and they're told the workers are legal. Okay, they're legal. If they're legal, how come Swift had 1,200 illegal workers who were using E-Verify? The system doesn't work. And if you're going to punish employers to use a system that doesn't work, you're not going to have a solution.
We had an overzealous human resources department who was asking for additional documents beyond what was required by the I-9 process. And we were sued by the federal government from the Department of Justice on asking for too much documentation. And basically, the lawsuit was basically sitting there saying, hey, Swift, you discriminated, you're asking for too much. And we're sitting there saying, but we're trying to balance the needs of only hiring the legal workforce and ensuring that this person is who they say they are.
En mi familia somos 5 conmigo, y tengo mi niña, la más grande. Ella nació en México, en el estado de Guanajuato, y ya me la traje para acá chiquita ella. Y mi segundo niño, él nació aquí en Greeley, Colorado. La tercera niña, pues también ella nació aquí. La primera vez que aplicamos para el permiso de residentes fue en el 2000, y estamos esperando todavía ahorita la cita con migración, porque estamos aceptados ya por migración de del permiso ese porque el hermano de mi esposa se hizo ciudadano y aplicó para toda la familia. Cuando yo estaba trabajando en SIP, pues estaba usando otro nombre de otra persona, pero a seguro derecho.
We would get a lot of complaints, and I say a lot, you know, 1 or 2 a week from citizens in other parts of the country, particularly the Southwest, California, Arizona, Texas, who would call this office and say, someone's using my name and they're earning wages at SWIFT. We would contact SWIFT, and SWIFT, by the time we got out there, the person would no longer be there. So we notified the federal government, and that must have been probably in mid to late 2005.
The journey actually started back in February of '06 or so forth, around February of '06, when one of our facilities, actually the government subpoenaed our I-9s, which is the form used by employers to certify that a person's identity is who they say they are and has been checked. And through the course of basically June and into July, we gave the government everything they asked for. We had nothing to hide. We'd heard rumors that ICE was gearing up for some big event. I mean, through the pipelines, through different contacts, through consultants, through the law firms, something big was happening. And then in November, we basically did what we did a last ditch. It was like a Hail Mary. It was that shot in the dark to try to prevent the company from being severely impacted. We went to court and to try to get an injunction against any raids.
They raid all the plants at the same time, and so what the International did, our International Packing House Director, what he did is he had a conference call with the presidents from all those locals, and we talked about what was happening at each individual plant. That's when I found out in Kentucky, the Kentucky plant, they just served the warrants on 6 or 7 individuals. And ICE, the federal government, went in and just got these 6. They did not round up everybody. They did not detain everybody. So that proved, at least to me, that proved that the federal government knows how to do it correctly within the constitutional limits.
They didn't raid one of our main facilities in Louisville, Kentucky. In fact, they handled that plant the way we asked them to handle it. Tell us who you're looking for, and we'll help you to identify those people.
I don't even think most of us can imagine what a white-collar family would have done under those circumstances, because it never happens to white-collar people. Our system is broken. If we want to talk about justice, that's one thing. If we just want to talk about law and order, then I guess we will proceed in the fashion we have up until now.
In May of 2007, following the December 2006 raid, I was invited and had the opportunity to go to Washington and speak. What I said that day, and I've been misquoted and misinterpreted on this, I said that the federal government needs to hold ICE accountable. And before there are any more of these immigration actions, their methods of operation and their behavior needs to be closely examined.
The day of the raid was peaceful, but many families and children were devastated by parents being arrested and detained. Children, citizens of the United States, were left without nurturing parents.
Never once did I say that individuals with illegal status should be allowed to stay here illegally. I feel like I had strong support as I returned from the Washington trip itself and in the days and weeks that followed. But then at the same time, I was also getting the criticisms and statements like, well, he went to Washington and stabbed us in the back.
I disagreed with his position on immigration. I disagreed with his position on some law enforcement issues and came out and opposed him in this most recent election.
There were a couple of very, very hateful mailings that were done by anonymous sources who, one of them was this letter, and with it was this check that had a signature, forged signature of mine, and it was made out for $3,000 and some, and it supposedly was to represent the cost to the state of Colorado of every illegal person.
At least one family, and perhaps more, were not having their cases brought up until October of 2008.
Los cargos era que me dijeron porque usaba papeles que no eran míos y que trabajaba en la compañía con esos papeles. y por eso me acusaban como criminales. Dijo el juez, tienes fianza, y por la vez me dio fianza también por mi familia. Por eso yo estuve todavía 2 meses más ahí. Pues, para mí fue en total 7 meses en la cárcel, así, casi un año. Estamos peleando ahorita y ojalá que... Tengo la fe que sí voy a ganar, aunque no gane la residencia, que me da un permiso de trabajar ya con eso.
The union was not only essential to getting legal representation for those arrested, but they were essential to providing money for groceries for the families who lost their primary breadwinner.
Llegué aquí el 5 de enero y estuve como 15 minutos aquí en la casa y le dije a mi esposa, es que yo vengo bien malo, le dije. Dijo, vámonos al hospital.
This issue of the costs of illegal immigration are affecting every single area of society. I could go through the budget of the state and I could probably point almost in every area additional costs that are being required as a result of illegal immigration coming into Colorado. It's affecting our hospitals. You know, you go down to the emergency rooms in the hospitals, and for the most part, they're full of Spanish-speaking people. You have the prison systems, huge numbers of people there illegally in this country that are in those jails. It's costing the taxpayers more money.
But they're paying taxes too. If they're buying anything in the state that has a sales tax on it, they're paying sales taxes. They're paying, gasoline taxes anytime they purchase gasoline. They're paying property taxes. We figured about half of the undocumented workers were working on the books, so they were in fact paying payroll taxes and income taxes. And they weren't quite covering all the costs, that we estimated, but they're covering 70 to 80% of them. The states and localities end up bearing a lot more of the costs and getting less of the revenues than the federal government does.
You can't bring in people from a third world country at the rapid speed we are and have them understand freedom and liberty and what made our country great. Our schools are being inundated now with people that can't speak English.
What do we do with someone that came here at 1 or 2 or 3 years old? What do we do with that person? And that's where the emotion comes in. They've been here their whole lives, they feel American, they speak the language, they're part of the culture, and this is their adopted country.
We're going to have 70 million baby boomers who are now going to be retired, not working any longer. And so I believe immigration is one of our demographic safety valves. It allows us to import workers who will help support Americans in their retirement.
If they're legalized, then guess what? They have access to Social Security benefits, and Social Security is a redistributive program. The poorer you are, the better deal you get out of it. So by importing large numbers of poor people and then legalizing them, what we're doing is creating an extra burden on the Social Security system. There's no boon.
There is an amount of money bordering on the billions of dollars that's in the Social Security Trust Fund that is assigned to numbers that don't match up well with the person who's working. And it's called an earnings suspense file. And it's been around since the beginning of the Social Security Administration, but you can see in the 90s, as we've seen more undocumented immigration come into the country, the amount of money in that earnings suspense file growing dramatically.
It seems odd to me that we allow goods to go back and forth across our NAFTA borders, but we do not allow any large number of workers to do that.
It's wrong on every level. It's wrong to hire the illegal aliens. It's wrong to hire them at $7 an hour. It's wrong to fill the schools with kids that don't understand English. It's wrong against our own children. So you can see it's just wrong on every level.
I think the problem are the forces that cause immigration, and whether it be wage disparities or access to jobs, healthcare, education. There's an imbalance around the world, and that is the problem.
They're not coming to the United States because it's the land of milk and honey. They're coming to the United States because there's jobs, and there's not jobs where they're at.
And obviously, people south of us, Mexico and Guatemala and so forth, want the best for their families. No doubt about that. We would all want the best for our families. And if they think they can get away with getting over here to, quote, Disneyland, I don't blame them for doing that. I do have a problem with the fact that their moral standards somehow are such that they're willing to say, well, I'm going to break the law of another country to get over, to feed my family, rather than turn inward to their own country and overthrow some of those individuals that are so corrupt in those countries.
What we can do is help them in their own countries to save themselves. And that's the real key here, is that first world nations survive this immigration juggernaut so that they can help solve the problems in the other countries.
And when we have a system that makes it impossible to feed your family in your own country, and also impossible to get a visa to go where the jobs are in another country, that's our responsibility. That's our responsibility, and we have to fix this system.
When's the last time you heard about a raid that didn't have the press there? Clearly, it's for publicity. Clearly, it's to send a message.
The raids essentially were a Christmas trick. They were a PR trick.
They're used to create fear within communities and among employers. They're used to demonstrate that the government is hard-headed and tough-minded and means what it says when it's going to target. But as a broad enforcement tool, raids are episodic. They're isolated by definition.
Yes, the police agencies have rights to go after criminals, and no one wants to do anything. No one wants to impede that. But to sit there and put a fishing net out, gather everybody into that net, and then sort out who the criminals are, and deny people their lawful due process and the freedom of movement, that's wrong.
ICE never conducts an illegal raid. If they conduct a raid, it's because they feel it necessary. And obviously they had over 200 illegals. They had several that had stolen identities from somebody else. And that I resent very, very much.
I do think enforcement actions are a good tactic. I think that it sent a clear message to the community.
These raids as a tactic are offensive. Not only are they offensive, in my opinion, they're illegal. They violate the U.S. Constitution.
But how is arresting a busboy part of helping national security? Raids don't work. They send the wrong message. They say, we're going to punish the worker. We're not going to punish the employer. If they went into a plant and hauled off the HR people and left the workers as they were, the message would get sent way faster than it's getting sent right now. You're just not going to see that because that involves too much risk for ICE. They don't want to harm those people because those people are going to get lawyers, they have constitutional rights, and they're going to complain if they're mistreated. All things that illegal immigrants who are working for a living don't ever do.
Si me deportan, mis hermanos todos, ¿qué van a hacer? Mis hermanos están estudiando aquí. Yo quiero que ellos sigan estudiando aquí, pues porque en este país yo los siento ellos más seguros.
Unfortunately, I lost the election, and it was over this. I had an email from one person who had been a supporter, and he said, Tom, you did a good job, but I can't support you. You went to Washington. That was his only reason.
If he wanted to go as Tom Selders, that was one thing, but he didn't. He went as the mayor. He went with the group that was definitely against ICE and definitely against anything happening to any of the illegals. That's why Tom Selders is not mayor now.
Mayor Selders did the right thing, and history will judge him as an advocate for human rights, as an advocate for policies that are fair.
I had a good fight, and I, continue to say I did the right thing.
We're often asked what the costs, the financial costs or impact of the raids were to the company. And the best way to describe it is it's in the tens of millions.
It's hard to know if the solution is complex because I don't think we've even decided what the true problem is.
Because at the heart of this debate, what you have is people who think, we have good laws and these must be bad people. Others of us know deep in our heart from our personal experience with immigrants for years that these are good people subjected to bad laws.
The other side wants what they want, which is amnesty. And the other side does not want amnesty. They want the rule of law.
It's the only realistic way of backing out of a problem over a period of several years that it took us many years to get into. What we call attrition through enforcement, steady enforcement of the law over legalization.
Let's start arresting these people and turning them over to ICE or creating holding facilities that will handle them or something. Let's deal with it.
We get enforcement first, and enforcement only. No quid pro quo, no nothing. Real enforcement, 5, 6, 7 years of consistent, comprehensive enforcement. Shrink the illegal population, and then maybe there's a deal to be made.
I think we've got to close our border. I think we absolutely have to stop people coming here illegally. I think we've got to get more people into this country legally, however that happens.
Is a fence going to solve the problem? It's not.
Are we a police state? Is everything going to come down to criminalizing people so that, and then police raids? Is that the solution in a free and democratic country?
We have to find a system that does clamp down on the border, does make sure that workers cannot come in violation of our laws, but also is economically sensible.
The idea of comprehensive immigration reform is that you combine smart border enforcement with getting tough on employers with access to needed workers for those employers who can prove they need them, plus a path to citizenship for those undocumented immigrants already here. The combination is designed to take illegal immigration, which is ongoing, and turn it into a legal regulated system.
How about allowing the market to determine the number of jobs and let that number be whatever the number is?
This is the worst thinking of the left and the worst thinking of the right coming together.
People on both sides need to recognize that motives on either side aren't necessarily evil, it's just people's opinion. So people against illegal immigration aren't necessarily evil racists, and people who are for a guest worker program aren't necessarily greedy capitalists.
What we need is maybe this sensible middle that basically says, look, why are we doing this?
And I think the public is actually much more open to, I wouldn't say compromise solutions, but much more open to some kind of middle way.
We all, in our own minds, say, this is the land of opportunity. This is the land of where we're fair to everybody. And I think we've got to say, are we being fair? Are we being equal?
Because the truth is, when you have a strong, growing, vibrant economy, guess what? People are going to want to come here. And if we continue to have economic growth, I don't care if they build a wall 30 feet high around America, they're going to come. They'll swim here, they'll tunnel here, they'll parachute into here. You know, they will find a way to come to fill the demand for jobs.
It's very easy to tear things down. It's a lot harder to build.
Are the actions today going to benefit the nation tomorrow?
It's becoming a defining issue, not what we do about immigrants, but what kind of country we are.
Who we are going to be as a society over the next 100 years.
We have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people need to speak.
to you. That's the reason that I sing the blues. I didn't paint it to the marquees. That's not the right way for me. SUG is my sanity, humanity. I can't be the doing what you love or set you free, but that's too many words, time to sing. I'm sick and tired